Ben the Prankster by James Allen. Chapter 1. Sometimes I don't think bullies even realise they are being bullies. Take Ben for example. Ben was a nice boy for most of the time. He loved to laugh and play with his best friends, Chris, Lucy and Zoe. And as most friends do, that would involve playing pranks on each other from time to time. Nothing nasty, just playful, fun pranks. Or at least that's how they started out. And I think that's how Ben still viewed them, even when they became less funny, embarrassing and hurtful for everyone else. I think probably the funniest prank played on Chris that I can remember was the one that happened during playtime at school. The whole class was playing hide and seek when it fell to Chris's turn to be the seeker. He turned to face the school wall, shut his eyes and began the countdown. However, before we all ran away to hide, Ben signalled for everyone to stay where they were. With a mischievous grin on his face, he then crept quietly towards the counting Chris, until he was right behind him. Ben then held out his hands and suddenly yanked poor Chris's trousers down in front of the whole playground. Laughter erupted all around, because unfortunately for poor Chris, it wasn't just his trousers that came down, but his pants had also fallen, so he was now standing with his bare bum in full show to the whole playground. It was so funny. We all laughed so hard that our tummies ached. Then poor Chris turned around so embarrassed that he burst into tears and ran away from us all. I remember feeling a little bad for him then, but everyone else found it so funny that I just joined in and carried on playing. Chris didn't talk much to Bren after that prank. Chapter 2. The funniest prank I saw played on Lucy was by far the one that happened during lunch break. We had been doing some allotment work in the school garden just before lunchtime when Ben found a worm wriggling about in the soil. Sensing an opportunity to play a prank on someone, Ben scooped the wriggly worm up and dropped it into his pocket before the bell rang for lunch break. After washing up, we were now in the lunch hall and the main dish just happened to be spaghetti. Lucy had already collected a bowl and placed it on her tray when one of her friends passed by and asked her something. With her attention turned towards her friend, Ben saw his chance. He pulled the slimy worm from his pocket and dropped it right into her bowl of spaghetti. Unaware of the slimy worm now in her lunch, Lucy finished talking to her friend and took a seat. In the meantime, Ben had been running around telling as many kids as he could about what was about to happen. So by now, just about all the kids' eyes in the lunch hall were fixed on poor Lucy. It seemed like everything went into slow motion as Lucy picked up her fork and jabbed it into the bowl of spaghetti. She twisted the fork around and then lifted it towards her mouth. There, wrapped around the fork, amongst some spaghetti was a slimy worm. Lucy opened her mouth and popped the full forkload right in. Immediately she pulled a funny face as she realised something was wriggling about inside her mouth. At that exact same moment, the whole lunch hall exploded with laughter. I was laughing so hard that I missed the look in Lucy's face when she spat out the food and realised she had been eating a slimy worm. I did see the look on her face though as she broke down in tears and was eventually led away by one of the teachers. I remember feeling bad for her, but everyone else was laughing so much that I eventually started laughing again too. For the next few weeks after that, Lucy became known as Slimy Lucy, which she hated. It was after this prank that Lucy stopped talking to Ben. Chapter 3. Another thing Ben liked to do was fart, then blame it on someone else. Usually it was with other boys in his class, but one day he decided to play this prank on Zoe, who unfortunately for her sat next to Ben in class. One afternoon when the class was all quietly working away, Ben let out a really loud fart that tore through the silence of the room. But before anyone could react, he suddenly turned to Zoe and said loudly, "Ew, Zoe, that's disgusting!" Poor Zoe was too shocked to know what to say, and instead just started turning red with embarrassment. Worse yet, Ben then began waving his hand around, saying, "And it's really smelly!" The class erupted in laughter, all pointing at Zoe. I was laughing so hard until I noticed poor Zoe, who had been turning redder and redder, had burst into tears and run out of class. The teacher began shouting, telling everyone to calm down before she chased out the door after poor Zoe. For the next few weeks, Zoe became known as Farty Pants Zoe, which she hated. After that prank, Zoe refused to talk to Ben again, despite sitting right next to him. Chapter 4. With all of his best friends now not talking to him, Ben wasn't sure what to do. Unsurprisingly, he thought another prank was the best way forward. So, during another quiet period in class, Ben decided he would do yet another fart and blame it once more on poor Zoe sitting next to him. But this time he would make sure it was the biggest, loudest fart he had ever done. He concentrated as hard as he could and began trying to squeeze out the loudest fart he could manage. He squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until suddenly the loudest fart anyone had ever heard echoed out of his butt and shattered the silence of the classroom. Zoe suddenly looked up at Ben in horror, realising that he was about to blame her once again. But Ben had squeezed and squeezed so hard that it wasn't just wind that had popped out of his butt this time. He had followed through and pooped his pants. As the whole class looked at him, his face gave it all away. He wore a look of shock and his cheeks were turning redder and redder. This time it was Zoe's turn to shout aloud as the smell started to waft out. Her face contorted with a disgusted look before she yelled, "Eh! Ben's pooped his pants!" The whole class erupted with laughter, pointing at Ben and holding their noses at the smell. This time I wasn't laughing at all. I felt awful and embarrassed, and realised just how horrible it is to have everyone laughing at your expense. That's because I'm Ben. As I waddled my way through the laughing classroom towards the toilet, I began to cry. After the teacher got me clean clothes, I spent the rest of the day sitting quietly, feeling down, as jokes and comments were made around the classroom about me. When school finished and I finally got home that afternoon, I ran to my room and cried some more. Then I started to think about how I felt and how my best friends must have felt when I had played pranks on them. I now understood why they didn't want to talk to me or be my friend anymore. I stopped crying and decided I had brought this all on myself and that it was up to me to fix it. So the following day at school, I asked to speak to Chris, Lucy and Zoe at playtime. I said I was sorry for all the mean pranks that I had played on them, that had hurt their feelings and made them cry. They accepted my apology and agreed to be my friend again, as long as I promised never to play pranks on them again. I promised, and I never did play any mean pranks on anyone ever again. Around school for the next few weeks I became known as Stinky Butt Ben, which I should have hated, but I didn't quite mind so much because I figured I deserved it. For a little while at least. And I was happy because now I had my best friends back again, and life is much more fun when you have your friends to play with. The end. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It's free to do so, and this will keep you up to date with every new James Allen story as soon as it is available. Once again, thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.